I have two parts that I would like to talk about. Uh, the first part is about the relationship between Thailand and Cambodia in general, as a general comment. And the second part would be about what's next. And that will be a couple of questions for Dr. Virachai to answer as well. So for the first part, I believe it is rather safe to say 50 years have gone by, and we can perhaps say that the 1962 judgment on the Phra temple is strewn with many historical, legal, political, and logical flaws. That makes it impossible for the differences between Thailand and Cambodia over the area surrounding Phra temple to be resolved. Personally, I believe not within my lifetime, but of course Dr. Virachai is always the optimist, and he believes that we can take small steps at a time. In fact, national pride aside, I am sure not even whether or not we find a resolution on to whom the surrounding areas of the Phra temple belongs to, I'm not even sure that it would make a difference to the government, and especially the people who live along the border area. This is because these people, they grew up, they live there, they die there. It is very universal around the world that for people who live along the border area of neighboring countries, they tend to just walk across the border. They trade together, they socialize. Many of them become relatives and hold dual nationalities. So it doesn't really make a difference to them. This is why when former Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition party right now, when Kunapisit came here, he was sitting here with all of us here. We basically told him that what we would like to see is a joint development effort of the disputed area, because it doesn't serve the interest of anyone to try to find a resolution, which in the end, I believe it would be difficult, first of all, to get an agreement. Secondly, it would be difficult to please anyone with the resolution. The reason why we say this is that we see that there is no other way. As I've said, the dispute can never be resolved due to the flaws of the deep-rooted problems in the way that the 1962 decision was deliberated and rendered. People along the border want to live peaceful lives. They want to earn decent incomes. They want to tend their farms. They want to welcome tourists. I don't think any of them, regardless of which side they are on, want to be victims of artillery fires or stray bullets. And that's why let's jointly develop the disputed areas. The fact is, whether politicians like it or not, Thailand and Cambodia will remain neighbors. We will continue to have differences over the 722 kilometers of joint border that we have. Nationalistic emotions would flare up from time to time, but let's get a grip of ourselves. And in the end, we'll still have to be neighbors. Life will go on. People have to eat, people have to make a living, people need to send their kids to school, and everybody should look to the future instead of dwelling on the past. So that's the first part of my comment. As for the second part, turning to what I see as the consequences of this judgment and where we go from here. First of all, I have to commend the government, just as Dr. Somkiat has done, and the Thai Foreign Ministry for coming up with the initiative to set up a joint committee well before the judgment of the court was rendered. In doing this, as I've said, in the spirit of what I've said, to look at the future and not dwell on the past, to see how the people of the two countries can co-prosper and live in peace together. Having the discussions ahead of the date of the judgment also helps to subdue and minimize any possible conflict that could arise and help remove much of the politics from the issue at hand. Where do we go from here? There are only two main points which needs to follow up from the judgment of the court. One is that Cambodia had sovereignty over the whole territory of the promontory of Phra, and the second is that Thailand was under obligation to withdraw all military troops and all security personnel stationed therein. By maintaining the position of the 1962 judgment to use the line in Annex 1 map as the reference for the disputed area, and I'm underlining here the disputed area, the court also rejected the map adopted by the Council of Ministers of Thailand in July 1962, as Dr. Virachai has pointed out. I see this as something important because Thailand has been using the map adopted by the Council of Ministers as the basis to claim the disputed area, all 4.6 square kilometers, which is the overlapping area between the line on Annex 1 map and the map adopted by the Council of Ministers. If my understanding is inaccurate, Dr. Virachai, please correct me on this. The questions are, without this map, what would be the basis that Thailand will reference the claim for the 4.6 square kilometers? And the second question is, does this mean that going forward, the 4.6 square kilometers will be no man's land and the two countries will forever be in conflict over this piece of real estate? The court says that the promontory ends at the foot of the hill of Phnom Tháp as it lies outside of the disputed area. But this is not to say that, in their quote from the judgment, this is not to say that the 1962 judgment treated Phnom Tháp as part of Thailand. As Dr. Virachai has pointed out, yes, Cambodia does not get the hill of Phnom Tháp, but it seems that Thailand does not have it either. So this is based on my reading of the judgment. So what will be used as the basis for future negotiation for this hill of Phnom Tháp? The map adopted by the Thai Council of Ministers has already been discounted by the court. So the next important issue is what will happen to the 4.6 square kilometers. It is clear from the interpretation of the court that the promontory of Phra is larger than what Thailand has earlier claimed. It also seems clear that a part of a 4.6 square kilometer will have to be handed over to Cambodia. A part of it, I'm not sure how big, how large, how small, but it seems that way to me. This I do not know, and maybe Dr. Virachai can help enlighten us on this as well. But what seems certain is that the disputed 4.6 square kilometer itself will be smaller, while at the same time, because the Council of Ministers, the map that was adopted by the Council of Ministers of Thailand has been rejected by the court. So does that mean that the disputed area will now be larger than 4.6? The last issue which I would like to raise is the obligation for Thai military troops to withdraw from the whole of the promontory of Phra. This is definitely a nationalistic and emotional matter for both sides. So therefore, it is important that both Thailand and Cambodia try to negotiate, at least to find out about the latitude and longitude of the promontory in order to be able to define where exactly are the areas that has been defined in the judgment of the court. As we know, even today, both countries are actually reinforcing the troops along the border, although Kun Kavi has pointed out that there has been no fighting, but it's not a good omen for something like that to happen. Finally, I would like to emphasize what I pointed out at the beginning. Thailand and Cambodia will always be neighbors, sharing common borders. It is very difficult to tell the difference between the two peoples who have been living there for generations. If you go to those areas, you wouldn't be able to tell who looks like Cambodian and who looks like a Thai. The two countries should therefore try to overcome this legacy of the past and look to the future with a bigger picture. The Phra temple, the court has also pointed out, has been designated as a World Heritage Site. And this is something not exclusive to only to Cambodia or to Thailand. And I think it should be something that the two peoples should take pride in. That's all the comments that I have. Thank you.